email in how to do it. I'll tell you that my favorite one is the last one. It came straight from the business planning clinic. Fill that out for 2021 and keep in mind that it is absolutely, we're dating that number, okay? But make sure we've got your economic. If you already have your economic model, it will actually help you a whole lot with today. And if you don't, it's not the end of the world. Just make a note to finish out your economic model. I am going to be moving pretty quickly today because we are going to take, there's going to be some things that we're going to work on that I'm going to ask you to take some time to write the answers down. So just make sure you have a pen and paper. If you do have a question or comment, put it in the chat box or unmute yourself. Depending on what it is, I might say, hey, we're going to get to that later, or that may be a one-on-one type thing. That way we can get through this fairly quickly, and yet you guys have all the information that you need. So that's the setup, and now diving in. So 7 habits of highly effective people, and we're looking at move from, utilizing this to set up next year. So the 7 habits of time are on timeless and universal principles of personal, interpersonal, managerial, and organizational effectiveness. That is what we are looking at. And so when we look at the 7 habits, number 1, continuous learning. Number 2, service, giving oneself to others, of helping to facilitate other people in their endeavors. Staying positive and optimistic, affirming others. Balance, spontaneity and serendipity, consistent self-renewal, and self-improvement. We went through those further in detail last call, and yet I wanted to make sure that we touched base on them today, just so we're always thinking about what are those 7 habits based on. And then effective people and ineffective people, and we're going to look at this every week between now and the end of the year. Effective people, we're proactive. Proactive people do more than take initiative. They recognize they are responsible for their own choices and have the freedom to choose based on principles and values rather than on moods or conditions. Proactive people are agents of change. Today, we're going to really dive heavily into that first habit, habit 1, be proactive. Ineffective people are reactive. Reactive people don't take responsibility for their own lives. They feel victimized, a product of circumstances, their past, and other people. They do not see themselves as the creative force of their lives. Next week, we'll dive into, so for those that are reading along, next week, you want to have read through number 2, because next week we're going to touch base on beginning with the end in mind. That's what effective people do. Ineffective people begin with no end in mind, right? There's a lack of personal vision. They've not developed that deep sense of personal meaning and purpose. So that's going to be next week. And then really quickly, habit 3, put first things first. Ineffective people put second things first. Habit 4, think win-win. Ineffective people think win-lose or lose-win. And effective people, habit 5, seek first to understand, then be understood. Ineffective people seek first to be understood. And then habit 6 is synergize. I am going to read this because we are going to move forward. Many of us either have teams, we're creating teams, we have families, all that. But habit 6, synergize. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. Synergistic, effective people, synergistic people seek the third alternative with others. Not my way, not your way, but a third way that is better than either of us could have come up with individually. Synergy is the fruit of respecting, valuing, and even celebrating one another's differences. It's about solving problems, seizing opportunities, and working out differences. It's the kind of cooperative, a creative cooperation of 1 + 1 = 3 or 11 or more, right? Where ineffective people compromise, fight, or flight. Ineffective people believe the whole is less than the sum of its parts. They try to clone other people in their own image. Differences in others are looked upon as threats. When you think about hiring for your team or other agents, a lot of times you want people that are different than you that support you, right? Because we all have our own strengths. If we have somebody that's exactly like us, they also have our own weakness. So are we looking at that and going, where's the synergy there? And then habit 7, sharpen the saw. Ineffective people wear out the saw. Ineffective people lack a program of self-renewal and self-improvement and eventually lose the cutting edge they may have once had. And I bring that up because we keep talking about, are we taking care of ourselves? Because that's sharpening the saw. Like if we are burnt out, we have worn out that saw. So where are you making sure you're taking care of yourself? So that's kind of a quick, fast overview. How many of you, I would love for either show of hands or unmute or put in the chat box, who filled out the 7 Habits profile? This is not something that you needed to send me. This was just for you. We had emailed this out. Anybody fill this out? I don't think I see everybody. So no, okay. Make a note. It's in your email. We'll resend it out today. Fill out the 7 Habits profile. It's just if we want to figure out where we're going, we got to figure out where we are. Like there's a reason that you go to the mall and it says you are here, because if you don't know where you are and you're looking for Dillard's, right, you're not going to find it as effectively and efficiently. Fill this out. Again, it's just for you. When we finish this, I'm going to have you fill it out again so that you can kind of see where you have improved. This is all about gauging our progress. So just make that a note, okay?
So I did fill it out.
Okay, you did?
I did.
Good. So we've got one of everybody. We'll take it. No. Just like the CNN version, Avery, when you filled this out, were you...
So I can't read it on here. It's so fuzzy. So I can't, I mean, I need to be able to see it to kind of give you my 2 cents worth. But all I remember is looking at my habits. They kind of sucked.
They kind of sucked?
Yeah. I mean, like bad.
Yeah.
So I need to, or I want to fix the habit part, because when it becomes a habit, it becomes easy.
Well, it's duplicatable, right? Like if you think about in Quantum, Gary talks about this in Quantum Leap and in Kids Can, habits are the bridge between activities. Like you need discipline to take us from, it's the habit bridge. And I'm probably butchering this, but until you have the habit in place, you have to use discipline, right? That's the bridge that gets the habit. That's why we feel like it's hard or challenging, because we're having to use that discipline. And yet once we create the habit, we don't have to use the discipline because it's a habit. We just do it. So today, and I love that you pointed that out, Avery, because today we're going to actually start looking at what are some of the habits that will power us forward. And everybody will have something different. We're going to be talking personal and business habits. And yet that's why that's going to be so important. So we know where we are, not in a good or bad way, just say we are here, right? Okay. So what is a habit? So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. A habit is the intersection of knowledge, skill, and desire, right? Knowledge is the what to do and the why. Skill is the how to do. Desire is the motivation, the want to do. Because how many times, and I'll tell one on me, right? 70 pounds ago, I could tell you how to lose weight. I didn't have the habit in place, right? So knowing something and doing it, completely unrelated, right? So, and then motivation, I'll mention this. So motivation in the book Atomic Habits, it talks, I can't think of his name, James somebody. One of the things he talks about, we all wait for, if we're not careful, we wait for motivation. Like, well, when I'm motivated, I'll do it. Actually, motivation works the other way. When you do it, you get motivated to do more of it, right? So anytime you feel like you need to get motivated, just go do it and the motivation will come. So all 3 of these things must come together in order to make a habit. So I'd like everybody to do this really quick. Think of 2 habits, one that's good and one that's bad, and you're going to write it down. That you have personally, one that's good, one that's bad. Just write that down. Maybe one side of the page is my good habit, my bad habit.
What if you don't have any good habits?
You have something. Okay, So now that you've got that written down, what I'd like you to do is write down the knowledge, skill, and desire connected with two habits. So for instance, let's say you've got a habit of working out. What's the knowledge? What's the skill? And what's the desire? Now, flip side of that, let's say you have a habit of not working out. What's the knowledge? What's the skill? What's the desire?
Do they have to be the same habit?
Mm-mm.
Two different habits.
No, two different habits. Yeah, a good habit and a bad habit.
Okay.
Or a good habit and something that's not a habit, right? Not necessarily, it could be a bad habit like biting your fingernails, right? And then once you have it, if you'll just kind of look up here, give me a thumbs up or something so that I know we're ready to the next piece. Okay, I think that's most of us. Okay. So this is the thing, and we all know, I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, right? Like, and for those, again, that are following along in the book, and yet I want to make sure that lots of times when we read things, we don't implement it into our world. Today's about implementation. Habits have a tremendous pull, more than most people realize or will admit. Breaking a deeply embedded habit involves great effort and oftentimes major changes in our lives. So look back at what you just wrote about your bad habit. And then you're going to ask yourself, and you're just going to jot down the notes, are you willing to undertake whatever is necessary to break that habit? And just on your page, yes or no. You might have some bad habits that you're okay keeping. That's okay. You get to choose, right? Everything doesn't have to be a good habit. But for that bad habit that you wrote, are you willing to undertake whatever is necessary to break that habit? Yes or no? The answer is yes. Write down 3 things that you will do to begin the process of breaking the habit. So what are the 3 things that you will begin the process of breaking the habit? So that's something that you might decide to do a 66-day habit, 66-day tracker on that habit and what you're going to do. Either way, what I'm going to ask is that you keep a record of your progress, right? Like, what are the 3 things that you wrote down that you're going to break the habit, and then keep a record of your progress. Keep in mind that you're going to hit roadblocks. If we weren't going to hit roadblocks, then it would already be a habit and we wouldn't need to do this in the first place, right? So just know that. And yet keep a record of your progress. Okay, because that's going to lead us to what is called the maturity continuum. The 7 habits provide a sequential approach to move us progressively on a maturity continuum from dependence to independence to interdependence. It makes me think of what Keith Cunningham said on at Mega Camp, right? If we have a goal, we don't have that yellow brick road, that pathway, that's where we get stuck, right? So today's about, okay, if this is the goal, what's the pathway to get from dependence and independence to interdependence? So what is this? So dependence, that's the paradigm of you. You take care of me, right? Then you've got independence. That's the paradigm of I. I am self-reliant. I'll just do it myself. I'm faster, right? I'm sure nobody but me has ever said that. Interdependence is the paradigm of we, right? We can do it. We can combine our talents and abilities to create something greater together. Anyone that's worked with an amazing admin or amazing partner in the past gets this at a high degree, right? Or maybe you've worked with a coach or a trainer and you're like, wow, I was able to do this on my own. And with them, I was able to do that. Despite independence being the avowed goal of many people in social movements, interdependence is the far more effective and advanced concept, right? Now, so if we look at where are you now? So where are you at on the maturity continuum? And just go ahead and write down what behaviors and attitudes do you exhibit that put you at this stage of the continuum, right? Because if you think about it, habits 1, 2, and 3 deal with self-mastery. So be proactive. Begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. That's that private victory, and that's where we start with the self-mastery. They help you progress from dependence to independence, or that private victory, right? And then you're thinking win-win, you're synergize, and you're seeking first to undertake, then to, or understand, then to be understood. So go ahead and just jot down where you feel like you are. And it might be in each one of those, right? You may feel like you're more mature with being proactive, or you might realize that you are dependent on someone else. As you become truly independent, you have the foundation for that effective interdependence, right? You have the character base from which you can effectively work on habits 4, 5, and 6. The more skill-oriented public victory of teamwork, cooperation, and communication. And then habit 7, that is the habit of renewal, a regular balanced renewal of the 4 basic dimensions of life. It encircles all of the other habits, right? So some questions as you're writing these down. What behaviors and attitudes do you exhibit that put you at whatever stage of the continuum you see yourself on? So what behaviors and attitudes do you exhibit that put you at whatever stage of the continuum you're on? Okay. All right, because this is the thing. Your life, my life, our life doesn't just happen, right? And I say happen with the abbreviations. Whether you know it or not, it is carefully designed by you or carelessly designed by you. It is, after all, your choice. You choose happiness, you choose sadness, you choose decisiveness, ambivalence, success, decisive failure. You choose courage, you choose fear. Remember that every moment, every situation provides a choice. And in doing so, it gives you a perfect opportunity to do things differently to produce more positive results. So we look at habit 1, being proactive. It's about taking responsibility for your life. It's about making sure that we stop blaming everything on our parents, grandparents, boss, coworkers, the market, how busy we are, how not busy we are, right? You know, is your terrible childhood or genetics or work environment controlling your life? Or how about growing up poor, right? That's a great excuse for all of your problems, right? Or my parents didn't teach me how to do this or didn't teach me how to that. We do have the freedom to choose. All of us do. Proactive people recognize that they are responsible. And I love this, and this is in one of the workbooks, responsible. But if you take it as 2 words, response, able. We don't blame, we get to choose not to blame circumstances, conditions, or conditioning for our behavior, right? We get to choose our behavior. Reactive people, on the other hand, are often affected by their physical environment. If the weather is good, they feel good. If the weather is bad, they feel bad. If somebody was mean to them, right, that plays a part. Somebody was nice to them, that plays a part. It affects their attitude and it affects their performance. That's a reactive person. So until we know ourselves and are aware of ourselves as separate from others and from the environment, until we can be separated even from ourselves so that we can observe our own tendencies, thoughts, and desires, we have no foundation from which to know and respect other people, let alone create change within ourselves. And that's a quote from Stephen Covey. And I love this quote from Beth. Life is a book and you are its author. You determine its plot and pace, and only you turn its pages. Are you living your life that way? Like you're the author of your book. And this is something that I want to, and again, this is in the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So, but you can take a picture of the screen, or we can send this to you. There's a couple of things right now that I want y'all to be looking at. Give me a second. I'm going to see if I can make this screen bigger. Nope, that did not work.
Which book is this out of, Olivia?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Okay. Between stimulus and response, you have the freedom to choose, right? This is our greatest power. One of the most important things you choose is what you say. Your language is a good indicator of how you see yourself. A proactive person uses proactive language. I can, I will, I prefer. A reactive person uses reactive language. I can't, I must, if only, they made me. Reactive people believe they are not responsible for what they say, that they have no choice. So think of 2 or 3 situations in your and so wait, before we get into that, I want you to look at this. So we have a stimulus and a response. Between those, we have freedom to choose because we are self-aware, right? In the book, it talks about, right, you think about a dog, you can train them to do tricks, but they can't be responsible for training themselves and taking that on. We're uniquely human in that. So we have self-awareness, imagination, conscious, and independent will. In just a second, we're going to look at, and you're going to have a formula for how to, when you have a stimulus before your response, there's an actual plan we can follow to see if we are choosing, we're exercising our freedom to choose, or if we're just responding the way that we've always responded. And it's right out, what is it? Albert Einstein's, if you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, the definition of insanity. So I want everybody to do this. Write down, I want you to think of 2 or 3 situations in your personal life. It can be the past week, past 2 weeks, when you responded in a reactive way. So write down 1 or 2, in the last week or so, think of 1 or 2 times where you responded in a reactive way. And then describe what you said. And I'm going to give you just 2 minutes to write it down. How did you respond in a reactive way? Describe what you said and go ahead and write that down. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do is in that same situation, write down what are some of the think of some of the proactive responses you might have used in that same situation and write them down. So you had your reactive, this is how it happened. What are some proactive responses that you might have used? All right. So you've got your reactive and you got your proactive. So during this next week, and for you guys that have been to Bold, Classic, or the New, right? We're used to paying attention to our language, right? We focus on, did I say but or try, or we also want to continue to focus on, are we using proactive language or reactive language, right? So this week, just really pay attention. If you find yourself saying, I didn't do it because I was busy, that's reactive, right? I chose not to do it because I chose to do something else. That's proactive. It might not feel good because we're taking the responsibility on, and yet when we're making a choice, we can then choose something different if we decide to. So now I want you to write down, is there an area in your life that you are unhappy about or frustrated by? Could be family, relationship, your job, business. Is there an area in your life that you're unhappy about or frustrated by? Write that down. So you're going to write down the area of life. And then write down, what are you unhappy about or frustrated by? So like if the area of life was, exercise or something, how do you feel, or what are you unhappy about or frustrated about in that area, right? For example, do you feel powerless, hopeless, used? So go ahead and write down, describe that situation. Okay. Now write down, what is the stimulus to your frustration or unhappiness? So what's that thing that sets it off? What's the stimulus to your frustration or unhappiness? And then write down, how do you respond? So an example of this, right? Stimulus, and this is right, small and yet can be big. Stimulus, I walk in and there is a dirty towel laying on the floor that, right, like right by the dirty clothes basket. My response is my head explodes and I start yelling at people, right? So stimulus response. So now this is where we get that, we're going to put something in the middle, that freedom to choose. What other choices might exist between the stimulus and the response that you wrote down? What other choices might exist between the stimulus and the response? Now this week, as this situation arises, you're going to remember your ability to choose your response. And instead of choosing that one that you would normally respond, you're going to choose your response from one of the responses that you came up with when we did that exercise, right? Because we're self-aware, we have imagination, we have a conscience, and we have independent will. Now, before we move to this next piece, which is, well, here, let me show you. So this next piece is where we're going to actually master the moment between a negative stimulus and your response by following certain steps. Before I go over this, is there anything that you guys would like to add, say, ask? Because I know I'm moving through this fairly quickly. We're good, or we're all shy?
Good.
Good. All right. So again, thinking about that situation that you just wrote down, right? That's because it's a recent situation. We've already worked through it. You're going to take it through these master steps. Could the outcome have been different if you had used this technique that I'm going to teach you, right? Or that the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People suggest, right? So now I'm going to ask some questions. This master checklist that I have up here, we're going to actually upload it to that open source file, so you'll have access to this. But this is where we make a conscious effort to use our pause button in the moment of choice and work toward proactive responses. So you're going to assess your progress, and then you're going to assess your progress at the end of this week. And so between the negative stimulus and your response, number one, you're going to ask yourself, how important is this situation to me on a scale of 1 to 5? Because you might decide, I really want to get angry. This isn't important. I'm going to choose to just not address it and walk away. Number 2, you're going to assess your initial reaction. Am I frustrated, angry, fear? Why am I getting, what did the stimulus do, right? Or how am I reacting to the stimulus? Then you're going to see the stimulus response model in your mind, right? This is how I can respond, and yet you're going to go back to here and remind yourself that I have a freedom to choose. Then you're going to think about a proactive response, and then you're going to engage or exit. So you're going to use the response you've chosen or exit the situation. That's how we're going to master the moment between the negative stimulus and your response. And then you're going to review your performance to see how proactive you are. Now, again, so these are some of the questions you're going to ask yourself at the end of next week. Matter of fact, I'll open up next week's call with this, so be ready.
Or is this call right here going to be where we can go back and listen to it?
Yeah, we'll email it back out either this evening or first thing tomorrow once we've got it situated.
Thanks. Awesome.
Yeah. So number one, what were the outcomes to my conscious proactive responses? That's the question that we're going to start with next week. You can write it down, or like I said, or these questions are going to be in that open source. What were the outcomes to my conscious proactive responses? Or the outcomes. Number two, what would have been the outcomes had I chosen reactive responses? What would have been the outcome had I chosen reactive responses? And number three, in what ways have my proactive responses improved my life? In what ways have my proactive responses improved my life? Do I need to repeat those, or do you guys have them?
Can you repeat the second one, please?
Yes. What would have been the outcomes had I chosen reactive responses? Okay. Any others? Okay, we're good. Okay.
Number one.
Number one. What were the outcomes to my conscious proactive responses?
Okay.
Mhm. Okay. And then the last thing I will say, remember progress, not perfection. Mastering proactive responses will take time and practice, probably for now until the rest of our, like the end of our days, right? And you may not always succeed, and just remembering that you have a choice will make a great difference. We have a choice, okay? Now, one of the things that we want to look at is how we're identifying our problems and challenges. So the problems, challenges, and opportunities we face every day fall into two categories. And that is the circle of concern or circle of influence. To me, this is a huge, when we look at what's going on in the world today, if you ever, if you go on Facebook for longer than 2 minutes, you get sucked into something. Well, we all have a wide range of concerns, right? Our health, our kids, problems at work, the national debt, terrorism, COVID, the weather, government conspiracies, right? Like this wide range. As we look at the list, it becomes apparent that there are some things over which we have no real control, and others that we can do something about. Proactive people focus their efforts on their circle of influence. They work on the things they can do something about. I can do something about my health. I can do something about the relationship with my kids, right? For those with kids. I can do something with something about problems at work. Reactive people, though, they focus their efforts in the circle of concern, those things over which they have little or no control. The national debt, terrorism, the weather, right? Gaining an awareness of in which area we expand our energies is a giant step in developing proactivity. Okay? So during this week, again, this is going to be something that we're going to send out to you. Write down the various challenges and problems you face. And then you're going to identify what area does each fall within and what is your immediate response. And we're going to do an example really quickly. So what is everybody write down, what is a problem or a challenge that you're dealing with right now? And what area does it land in? Is it a circle of concern or a circle of influence? And then what is your response? And this is just in the natural, right? Like without thinking about it. So for instance, I'm going to use this one because it's kind of on the nose. It's stuff that we're all dealing with, right? Challenge or problem. Depending on where you land on this, right? Wear a mask. Well, is that a circle of concern? Something I can actually do something about? Or, I mean, is that a circle of concern? I don't have any real control over that. Or is it a circle of influence? I can actually do something about it. I don't know if anybody, for you guys that have been, there was a program I went through called Landmark. And one of the things they talked about was if you're not willing to do something about it, don't complain about it. So if you find yourself every day driving along and maybe there's somewhere that there should be a stoplight instead of maybe a stop sign, or there should be a stop sign, and you just fuss and get pissy about it every single day. You have to do one of two things as a proactive person. You have to say, you know what? I'm going to let it go. Or, you know what? I'm going to petition the chamber. I'm going to actually get involved and get a red light there, or a stop sign there, or whatever that is, right? So that's one of the ways that you can look at it of, is it a, circle of concern, or is it a circle of influence? Am I just bitching to bitch, or am I going to actually do something? And then, right? I probably owe some money to KW Cares right there, right? So you're going to keep in mind this model and making your circle of influence. Now, one of the interesting things, we can make our circle of influence grow when we choose one challenge, right, from each of the areas. What's a circle of a concern challenge that I've got? What's a circle of influence? What can I do about it? So write down a circle of concern and a circle of influence challenge that you have that you're going to work on during this next week. And then you're going to focus on how could you change your response to meet the challenge more effectively. And this is all about that taking initiative, right? This came from, again, one of the workbooks around the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I can't say the guy's name, so I left it out. One of Aristotle's contemporaries desperately wanted to be a public speaker. He was inarticulate, he stammered in pronunciation, so it really made his dream seem unlikely. Through conscious endeavors, though, he overcame his limitations. He learned to speak distinctly. He actually put pebbles in his mouth and talked, and he trained his voice by seeking and reciting speeches while breathlessly running up and down stairs. So I want you to write this down, or the answer to this. Is there something you've always wanted to do and felt you didn't have the talent, time, or ability? If so, write it down. What's that thing you've always wanted to do and felt you didn't have the time, talent, or ability? And then write down, what would it take for you to overcome your weakness? What would it take for you to overcome whatever that is, time, talent, or ability? And then write down what's one thing you could do this week to begin that piece. Okay. Now, this is where we're going to wrap up that piece of it, and then we're going to jump into the lead generation model. any ahas, thoughts, questions when we look at the circle of concern, circle of influence? Insights, ahas?
I'm having a hard time, since you defined it, the circle of concern. I usually try to find a solution for anything that is weighing heavily on me. I'm sorry, that's my bird. So to find something in my circle of concern that I would just say, either I have to stop complaining or do something about it, I usually wind up doing something about it. So I guess it doesn't really stay in that circle.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
But
So,
that's okay.
yeah, absolutely. Because it's a decision, right? It's more like if we find ourselves really focused on getting frustrated about something, we've got to identify, is it a circle of concern or is it a circle of influence?
Right.
And if it's a circle of, if you want to bring it into your circle of influence, you can by doing something about it.
Right.
If you just find yourself, talking about it to people over and over and over, that's not really doing something about it, right? So that's, how you can get proactive in there. Okay?
Okay.
Perfect.
So that when you say circle of concern is when you really talk, but you don't do.
Yeah. And the circle of concern is something that I really can't do anything about. So for instance, I can't personally do anything about global warming now, and I can just complain about everybody and everything, or I could say, wait a minute, while I may not change everything, I can choose to focus on this one thing. I can recycle. I'm making that, whatever it is, and then let the other stuff go, or say I'm gonna write a book about it, or but otherwise realize that you're just using a lot of time and effort and energy because you're not actively you're not enlarging that circle of influence. Does that help? Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. So, all right. So now we're going to move into that lead generation model. That's what we're going to use the last for our time together with here. So when we look at the lead generation model, most of this is not going to be new to anybody on this call. And yet we want to look at it and go, are we being, what is our method? What is our method of lead generation? And then we're going to focus on our 3 key focus areas and looking through that lead generation model. There is nothing unintentional about lead generation. Everything you do should purposely move you closer toward a goal. If your lead generation isn't a part of a larger strategy, you're simply wasting 2 of your most precious resources, time and money, right? So when it comes down to it, lead generation is taking a message and using a method to drive that message to the desired audience. So we call this message and method of your lead generation, right? The 2 M's. So what's your message and what's the method? It's deceptively simple, and yet they form the basis of all your lead generation efforts. So for your lead generation to be effective, your message needs to do the 2 things. It needs to match your market, and it needs to make an offer for immediate response.
So how do you match your market or watch your market? What's the just throw a elevator speech, how you do that?
Right. So matching your market simply means tailoring your message to the sentiments and the market conditions of a target group in an area which you operate, and making that offer for immediate. So like, let's say you're going after for sale owners. You're going to give them a different message than you would give a web lead.
Okay. I got you now.
Yeah. And then making an immediate offer or immediate response means enticing the recipient to reach out to you. So your offer now, it can be direct or indirect. So direct, call me now to set an appointment. Indirect, find out more information on my website. Different audiences and markets call for different types of offers, but what each offer should have in common is that they entice the recipient to, in your message, to act. A lot of times, one of the things that we do incorrectly is we try to make a message for everybody. Wait a minute, if you're targeting first-time home buyers, target first-time home buyers. That message is not going to be the same message for people that are reselling, right? And then make sure just every one of your message Does it have a call to action? Make no mistake about it. You're not lead generating without a call to action. You might be branding, but you're not lead generating. Okay, so it's got to have a call to action. And then there are two primary methods of getting your message out to the target groups. You've got prospecting and marketing. Prospecting simply means you're going out and finding leads. Marketing means leads are finding you. Both work well. However, many businesses use a combination. Now, the recommendation is that your lead generation model is prospecting based, marketing enhanced. And yet a lot of times what I find is that people are either prospecting based and that's it, or marketing. We want prospecting based and marketing enhanced. So you want both. So let's get deeper into what that means. So your 3 key focus areas for lead generation: be prospecting based, set up a database and feed it, and systematically communicate with your database. Again, y'all all are tired of hearing that, and yet it's such that number 1. There are 2 primary methods of getting your message out. We talked about that: prospecting and marketing. Prospecting, proactive and direct. That's the act of searching for your leads, right? Seeking your leads out. I'm going to go find those for sale by owners. I am going to door knock a neighborhood, right? We're finding them. Prospecting keeps you in an active versus a reactive state. It allows you to focus on proactive customer creation activities that are going to be critical to your ability to hit your numbers when the market shifts. Prospecting works in every market. And marketing, though, is where we're actually attracting, right? It's proactive and it's indirect. It should support and enhance your prospecting conversations. So marketing equals attracting leads. You attract them, they find you. So if you mailed something to a neighborhood, you mailed something to a for sale by owner, you're running a Facebook lead, right? A magazine article. Marketing is a leveraged activity. It happens even when you're not doing that. So typically, to generate the number of leads that you're going to need, prospecting alone won't be enough. Marketing actively can give you the leverage you'll need to generate more leads. Okay, so they both have their merits. Now, the average millionaire real estate agent receives most of their business from their top 2 lead sources, and 90% of their total business from their top 5 lead sources. So have you identified your 2 to 5 business sources? A lot of times we want to name like 50 or 15. We want 2 to 5, because after that, it's not that we're going to turn business down that comes from another source, but we're not actively focused on it, because otherwise we are, we're going to, it's just like anything else. We don't get anything done because our focus is too spread out, right? So top agents are always constantly searching for new opportunities and new realm of lead generation, and yet they focus on mastering just a few methods, because it's easier to master and scale 1 or 2 lead generations methods for your business than it would be to master 10. So using that scattered buckshot approach when searching for leads simply doesn't work as you grow your business, okay? So what are your top 3 to 5? Now, this is an example, and this is from the MREA, right? Lead generation is an ever-evolving list of ideas, methods, and practices that bring leads to your business. And I know that's a little bit harder to read on my screen, so we'll send this out as well. But go through here. One of the reasons that I wanted you to have your part 1 of your business plan done is, if you are already closing certain business, well, that definitely is going to be probably your 1 and 2. And then you might add a 3rd one, right? Or you may take 1 and go, okay, how do I up my game with that, right? So we're going to set up and then at the heart of your lead generation is a large, powerful contact management database, right? Whether you use Command or something else. Do you have a database? Are you feeding it every single day? Do you have or do you have campaigns set up so that they're followed up? So your database is going to be into 2 different. You got leads. Sometimes we used to call those the not mets, but a lead, somebody comes in from a website. The definition that we're using is leads are people who have the right, you have the right at least to have a one-way conversation with, right? They raise their hand some way. So let's take, I'm going to use for sale by owners because they're an easy one to touch base. You go to Zillow and you pull a for sale by owner off. You don't have their permission yet to do a one-way conversation. They're a prospect. If you contact them and they go, sure, you can contact me back, you're going to they're going to fall into that lead or the contacts. A web lead hits your inputs their information. They've at least given you the right to have a one-way conversation. Then you're going to put them on a 19 to connect. So you're going to touch them 19 times or until they respond. Then you move them into a contact because now you've established two-way communication with. These touches are interactive and value-based. And that becomes that 36 touch, okay? Now, really quickly, the lead generation number game, we won't cover this very much except for as an example. If you were looking to close 350 deals, because this is what we used for the millionaire, like as a millionaire real estate agent, your conversion rate, if you had 100%, if you had 5,833 in your database, you would need 100% conversion rate to have the 350 deals. So this just demonstrates the size of your database could potentially translate, how it could potentially translate into closed sales. Okay. So let's look at the first number we look at is the opportunity. Now to do this and write this number down, we're going to make an assumption, and this is studies that KWRI has done. We're going to make an assumption that 6% of your database will buy or sell a home in any given year. 6%. Now, the second key number that we want to think about is your conversion rate. So based on the frequency and the quality of your outreach into your database, you're going to have a conversion rate. This is the percentage of that 6% of your database that is likely to buy or sell a home and call you to handle their transaction.
How much?
Okay. What was that?
What is that conversion rate?
It's gonna depend on your conversion rate, which we're gonna give that. I will go over that in just a second as an example.
So restate what you state, and I'm sorry for making you go back and say that.
Okay, so based on the frequency and the quality of your outreach, you're gonna have a conversion rate.
Oh, I got you. I'm with you now.
Yeah, so if 6% of our database is gonna buy or sell, how much of that are we gonna actually get because we're staying in contact with them? Okay, so now if we look at that in the lead generation numbers game, I'm going to run through this. This is part of your homework, and it was in that email from yesterday that you can print this out and do this, right? So how many people do you need in your database? So let's backtrack and see how many people you need to have in your database in order to meet your goals. So number one, the first number you need to write down is the number of people in your database. So everybody write down the number of people in your database. My example, I'm going to use 900. You're going to multiply this number by 0.06, which is 6%, because we're saying that 6% of your database will buy or sell a home in any given year. And then we're going to multiply that by your conversion rate. Now, if you don't know your conversion rate, use 50%. So if we have 900 in our database, 6% of those are going to buy or sell, and if we got a 50% conversion rate, then my opportunity is 27 deals.
Hey, Olivia.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that, how would you figure your conversion rate from the number of people you have in your database, just based on the number of referral or based on the number of people that you have in your database that are doing business with you now?
Yes. So you can go back. That's the best way to do it. Yeah. So the best way to do it is go back and look at your database right now. Let's say I have 900 people in my database, and we figure the 6%, and then we go, well, how many of those did business with me this year?
Okay.
Right. And then whatever that percentage, then that becomes your conversion rate.
Okay, so, all right. Perfect.
Does that make sense? So 900 times 6%, let's say that gives, well, easy math, 100 times 6%, that means I'd have 6 people that closed with me, or that should have. And then I look at it and I go, well, only 3 did. Well, then I'm okay. Then I'm at 50%, right? And then and then that's the number you would use for your conversion rate. Or you've been working your database really well and you're like, wow, that's 70. I'm at 70. I had 7 out of the 10 do business. Okay, now I'm at 70%. That's my opportunities. So the question that you want to ask yourself is, do you have enough opportunity with your current database? Can you hit your goal? Because you might discover that you can actually hit your goals with your current database. Now, we're going to do the second calculation to determine the number of contacts you need in your database to hit your goal. So begin by writing down our total units sold goal. So in my example, I'm going to use 50. You want to use your 2021 goal. And then we say we're going to divide that by 6%. And so if I'm at a 50% conversion rate, I need 1,666 contacts to hit my goal. And remember, we're talking contacts. We have permission to have a 2-way communication with them. Okay? Or we've established some type of 2-way communication. So that's how typically, again, if I wanted to do 50 units, I would need 1,666 contacts to hit my goal. So if you don't have that number, right, okay, I need to go to work adding more people to my database. So go ahead and write down how many people that you need to add to your database. And guys, I apologize. We're going over a little, but really am. We're almost done. And if you have to drop off, I get it. I'll keep going, and then we will send this out as a recording.
Olivia, we always struggle with the people that are in our database. I guess we have a lot of prospects. We have some people that we could possibly have a one-way conversation with, but we really don't know the numbers exactly. There's so many people in the database, but I don't think they all know us, so I don't know.
Well, and that's okay. So as long as you're counting it right. So we're looking at these as contacts. We've had 2-way communication. So that's one of the things that you might start working toward in your database is, when you pull somebody up and you have permission to do a 1-way, do you have them tagged that way? And then once you have a substantive conversation and they become a contact, do you have them tagged that way?
Okay. Add that in. Can add that in command and it's tagged. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Olivia.
Uh-huh.
Talking about 6% of our database will buy or sell, but are you also figuring out how many referrals they're going to give us? Or are you just talking about the actual them doing business with us?
Yeah. So both. Yeah. So the answer would be both. So 6% of them are going to buy and sell, and then they're going to give you the referral. So that should be included in there as well. Now, keep in mind that, like Hobie, you do lots of your business from your database. So you might have I know you're going to have I'm pretty sure you have a higher conversion rate than the 50%. I would think if the business is coming from your database, even if it's a referral, that would be included in that 6%.
Okay, I was just making sure that you were counting that, because I probably do half my business is repeat business. They're actually doing business with me. And then the other half is referrals from those same people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you could even check, because with your database, you could check, see if that 6% holds true for you, right? Because that's the other thing is this is the average, right? You might realize that, like, if you go back to your database and look at go through with that and see everybody that sold this year and referred, you might realize that yours is an 8%, right? So we're using 6% as the average. Okay. All right. Okay. So that's the math that you guys are going to do based on, that's why we wanted your economic model. So you're going to have your economic model that's going to tell you how many appointments you need. And then you're going to go, okay, do I have enough leads to hit those appointments, because that's usually where we fall off. We know, I need an appointment this week. I need an appointment. Well, how many leads do I need to get an appointment? I don't know. And that's why I'm always on us about like tracking our numbers, right? Okay. So then we're going to systematically communicate with the database. So we want to do something we call desaturate. Real estate is a close contact sport. I love, somebody said belly to belly, toes to toes. I don't really like that, except it is a close contact sport, right? Real estate sales is frequent and systematic close contact. The size of your database is one thing. The quality of interactions that we have with the people in our database is more important. So sometimes, I remember I was in a Gene Rivers, for you guys that have been in classes with him, I was so excited because he was like, how many's in your database? And my hand kept going up. I had like 6,000 people in my database. He said, how many you have closed last year? This was like my second or third year in the business. And I was like, 20. He was like, your database sucks. And it hit me because it really did. Just having names and numbers is not effective. It's, are you communicating with them? Sometimes less is more in this situation, okay?
I've got an Excel spreadsheet. I don't have a database.
Yeah. So then you've got to work on, are we communicating, right? We could have a white pages, right?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's all I got.
Mm-hmm. So write down what's one thing you can do this week that moves you closer to that database. Now, if we do this, and so when you market yourself to your audience, it needs to be systematized such that your audience is touched numerous times in a consistent fashion. 3 general approaches when prospecting and marketing to your main audiences. So captured and connected. 19 to connect. So through a 19 to connect program, you'll prospect and market to prospects you've captured with the intention of opening communication, asking for permission to build a relationship, and when possible, closing a deal. Okay? The model for a 19 to connect program mixes together personal interaction with value-based offers. So that's that 19 to connect. Now, we cement a high-value touch that solidifies the relationship you have established. So back in the day, or in the MREA, it talks about the 8x8. It's now a 19 touch. I meet you at a party. I'm going to put you in my database, and I'm going to put you on this 19 to connect, right? You hit my website. I'm going to put you on a text plan to get you to respond, right? Like the 10 days of pain type thing. Like I'm hitting you with email and text and blah, blah. Once you connect with me, I'm going to put you on that 19 to connect to ensure that you remember who I am. Then I'm going to cement the relationship and then move you to that 36 to connect, right? The 36 Touch program is a systematic marketing and prospecting technique that ensures year-round contact with all the leads in your database. The goal of your 36 to Convert program is to walk them through the value program you develop so that you'll be the real estate agent they call when they're ready to buy or sell a home, or if they have an opportunity to give out a referral. On top of that, it should end in some type of affinity program that maintains the mind share you gained after the transaction has taken place. That way you can continue to benefit from a referral relationship as well as have a chance of earning their business again when the time comes, okay? So again, time, one of the reasons we're meeting every week is because we're going to dive deeper into this. That's as deep as we're going to cover that today. And yet, so keeping in mind, right, you may go, I don't have a 19 to connect, I need to create one, or a 36, or whatever that is, write it down individually, and as a group, we'll kind of start putting those pieces into place. But my intent today is that you kind of have an overview, and more importantly, you can do the numbers for yourself and go, this is how many leads I need to have in my database. This is my gap. And then we can tackle, how do we create that gap? Or you might decide, I have enough leads, I'm just not interacting with them enough to get the appointments that I need, right? And that's 2 different approaches that we're going to tackle with that. So we're 10 minutes over. I appreciate you bearing with me again. This is going to be recorded. Before we completely wrap, any ahas, thoughts, or questions that you would share before we finish?
Need to go through the database and clean it up, make sure we've got people that we can actually, that are not just leads, and then just tag them properly.
Yeah, being very intentional with that database. John's the only one. Okay, John, we got one aha around. Okay, so let me do this. And I know Zoom's always an interesting thing too, right? Your action steps. Part 1 of your business plan, if you haven't done it, complete that. Just part 1. That's for this year. Your economic plan, we're going to resend that out so you can fill that out. And then your lead generation plan. Because individually, what we're working on weekly is how to finish this year strong. And we want to make sure that we've got next year set up really big. And then read habit 2 this week in the, and then continue to work on your language. So are you being proactive or reactive? Are you in the circle of concern or the circle of influence? Okay. All right. On that note, we are done. We are complete. We'll be sending this out. If y'all have any questions or anything, call me, text me, email, and have an amazing rest of your Thursday.
Thank
You
you.
too. Thank you.
Thanks.